Hello and welcome to Butch's Building Blocks. I built this beautiful star the other day, and then I went to make another one that was a bit larger. Here's what the other star looks like. It started out really well. I made one small mistake. I cut that angle wrong. Tried to recover from it, but I can't. So let's take this failed star and let's turn it into something beautiful. First thing we're going to do is cut this end piece off here so that we have something that's relatively close to a rectangle. I've already set the distance between my fence, so let's go ahead and rip all these off. Here are our 5 pieces that we've taken off the tips on. Since all of these angles are 18 degrees, fit nicely into, let's call it a pinwheel shape. We'll glue these up so that we have a nice solid shape to start to work with. After you have the first 4 glued on, go ahead and put that 5th one in there. Depending on how close you got these tips to each other, this one may have a little gap that you have to adjust for. But this time seemed to work out very well. After you've got your pinwheel all glued up, now we need to fill in this empty space here. I know that this angle here is 18 degrees, so this has to be an 18-degree angle here. If you have a piece of scrap wood, find one, and then place your pinwheel on top of it. Draw some lines so that you can get an approximate idea of how many you can get out of the board. I've already done this on this side, and I will be able to get all 5 of my triangular pieces out of the board. Now we have all of our 5 triangles when we're ready. Our next step is going to be gluing them together. You can glue 2 at a time and run your clamp across here, hold it in place, and pick another 2. And of course the last one is the easiest to do. Once you get to this point, if you have a drum sander, sand it down so it's nice and smooth and flat on both sides. After we get it smooth, we're going to draw a circle on it from the center point and cut off all the pointy ends. That'll be our next step. At this point, we have 2 sides that are smooth. We need to get rid of all these jagged points right now. So I have my compass set at the middle, and I just went to the shortest edge. So we have a 7-inch diameter circle, which we're now going to go to our circle cutting jig on the bandsaw, and we will cut this out. Okay, the hardest part of a circle cutting jig is getting it to where you want it. That's the hole that I wanted it to be in, and that's where my jig dropped. So I'm gonna have to recut this. Okay, this time I drew some center lines to help me find the center point. Let's cut this one more time, see if we can't get it to work. Okay, so that time I was in my center hole. Problem is, this is not round, this is lopsided. I'm going to have to move my center pin and cut a smaller diameter circle so that I can get this nice and round instead of this awkward oval looking thing. Okay, we're back here. This is now 3-inch radius or 6-inch diameter circle. Let's see if we can't get it to work. Okay, that time it worked nicely. Okay. Now we have a very nice round circle that we can work with for our next step. We have our 6-inch diameter circle here, and now we need to inlay it into the board. I have 2 pieces of maple. What we need to do is make a circle and cut it out so that this fits down in. Now, if you have a CNC, it's not a problem. But if you look at this, we have to cut one center board at a time. The center of this circle has to be right on the edge of this platform, which is impossible to do. So you need some double-sided sticky tape and another piece of wood. Double-sided sticky tape these 2 together, and that will allow you to get a center point right on the very edge. And then we'll just cut out 2 half circles at 6 inches in diameter. We have an 18-inch board. I've marked my center point at 9. I've applied my double-sided sticky tape. Peel it off and then give it some pressure so that it lasts. Doesn't really matter what dimension this board is in length, but it needs to be the same height. Okay, now we have it. We'll mark our center hole, go to our circle jig, and cut it out on the bandsaw. After doing your bandsaw work, you should have something that's pretty close. You can see I'm off probably by 1/32 of an inch there. Putting our circle into there fits, relatively speaking, very nicely. You're probably saying, yeah, but you've got it loose and it's wobbly, it doesn't look good. We're going to fill this circle with epoxy, and that will take care of that problem. And it'll actually give it a very nice black outline to distinguish this piece from these pieces here. Now that we have our 2 pieces glued together with our circle, we do know that there's a gap around the outside, which is intentional. We need to fill that gap with epoxy. Usually, if it was a big pour, I'd build a full frame for it. But in this case, I just have some extra wide sticky tape that I'm going to apply to the back side here. Okay, that'll be enough to keep the small amount of epoxy that we're pouring from leaking out. Turn this over. We have this sticky tape up. Take your circle, center it as best you can, and drop it in place. Give it a good push, and that'll keep it from falling out. And now we're ready to mix and pour our epoxy. Even though this is a very small epoxy pourer, and I do have sticky tape underneath of here, I've still put some clamping pressure on the top to make sure that the epoxy doesn't leak underneath of here. And I've also have 3 clamps on the sides to make sure that it's really tight to the board. Here's what it looks like after you've poured the epoxy and it's hardened. I did sand the middle out just to get rid of that. From here, we need to go to the drum sander. The maple is proud of this inset, so we'll have to use my drum sander and cut it down so it's nice and level. This is what our board looks like after it's gone through the drum sander. It's looking pretty good. Next thing we need to do is to put some arcs in here, smooth this out so it looks more acceptable than having a circle in the middle and square edges on the outside. I chose a rather big arc for the corners so that it matched the circle a little bit better. Now it's time to head to the bandsaw and we'll cut these out. After cutting the arcs out on the bandsaw, I went to my belt sander and just smoothed up the edges. All we need to do now is put a 1/4 inch round over on them, and then we'll be finished with this portion. I've sanded it to 220 grit. Now it's time to put a little bit of cutting board oil on it and see what it looks like. I like the colors in the circle here. They jump out very nicely against the maple, and the black ring just accents it. Here's what our final product looks like. It's actually pretty darn nice, given the fact that the centerpiece was a total disaster and I would have had to throw it away. At least we've managed to produce something that's saleable and beautiful at the same time.